as I mentioned earlier, Jordan was asking, can anyone explain to me how they are graphing in Excel step by step? I have the Excel tricks document, but it isn't helping. I'm trying to work on the Word document assignment question 3C. Well, of course, I don't want to tell you how to do question 3C because that's giving you the answer. And why would I want to help you guys out that much? So that was just about, I can at least show you the question, though, because everyone can see that. So generate a 2010 supply-demand graph in Excel. And so I gave you earlier in question 3, you had the demand equation, the supply equation there. And I'm just asking you to draw a supply-demand graph. So we can start by going in Excel here. And I'll have I'm going to make a price column, a quantity demand column, quantity supply column. And let me see if chapter 2 has some good equations we could use instead of the equations that I gave you. That's pretty huge. That's big too. There we go. Technical problem. Is it a technical problem? Probably. Yeah. Technical problem 13. So I'll put that at the top too, just to give you a little note. Tech problem 13, which is on page 80, has QD equals 50 minus 8P, and QS is negative 17.5 plus 10P. Christopher asked, everybody, after you have your quantity supplied and quantity demand equations, how do you decide where to start as far as inputting P to start graphing? So I'm assuming he's asking, how do you know which prices to use? Should I have my price go from 1, 2, 3, 4? Should I go $10, $20, $30? Probably the best thing to do is to solve it algebraically first, and then you'll get a sense of what the equilibrium price is and the equilibrium quantity is, and that'll sort of guide you as to the sorts of prices that you should plug into your Excel table here to generate the graph. Because if you get an equilibrium price that's $3, then you might, if you want to make a decent sized graph, then you might do like 50-cent increments where it's 50 cents and $1, $1.50. So you'll have your $3 equilibrium price, which you know is the equilibrium, and you can go a little bit beyond that just to get the curves on the other side of that price too. If you get an equilibrium price of $1,000, then you wouldn't want to go in 50-cent increments because your table would be way too big. So probably the thing to do would be to solve it algebraically first. So why don't I say solve algebraically with 2 L's. I don't know if that's, yeah. So in that technical problem part A, that's what they're asking you to do. What is the equilibrium price of quantity first? So I know that in equilibrium, these two have to be equal. So I can just set these up. 8P negative 17.5 plus 10P. So here's my demand side. Here's my supply side. Put my prices on one side and my constants on the other. I'll do 50 plus 17.5 equals 10P plus 8P, just to rearrange the terms. 67.5 equals 18P. So my P has to equal, and here I'll just have Excel do the heavy lifting for me. 67.5 divided by 18. You guys can probably do that in your heads, but I can't. So $3.75. That looks like my, currency should be the default. Why do I need this much space between the dollar sign and my number? So do it currency, thank you. Okay, so I know that my equilibrium price is going to be $3.75, and you could test that. Go back in here and say 50. So I'm setting up an equation now. 50 minus 8 times, and I'll even reference this cell, 375. And that'll give me actually this is a quantity now, of 20. So when I plug in that equilibrium price in the demand equation, I get a quantity of 20, which I should get exactly the same thing when I plug that price into the supply equation. So equals negative 17.5 plus 10 times that price of 375. And I get 20 again. So here's my quantities. Both of them are 20. So I know that my equilibrium price is 375, my equilibrium quantity is 20. So if I want to generate a picture of this, I know that my price is 375, so like I said, maybe maybe even 25-cent increments, just because I've got a 75 there. Well, let me not do, let's do 50 cents. So do 50 and $1, and I'll set these. You don't have to do these units like I'm doing, but I may have mentioned this in one of my PDFs or the videos on graphs in Excel, but you can see this little small square down in this corner. Some of you may know some of these Excel tricks that I'll just mention. There's this little box in the lower portion of where I'm highlighting, and Excel can sense sort of the pattern that I've established here at 50-cent increments. So I'm just going to do this, pull it down, and it copies it all the way down for you. So instead of having to type in 150, type in $2, it'll do it automatically. So I've got my prices here, and for my quantities, again, I'll just type in the equations that I need. So my quantity demand equation is that 50 minus 8 times, and then I want to reference that cell for the price. I'll hit tab to go over here. 70.5 plus 10 times that price. And again, these are quantities, so I'm going to take the dollar signs off of these. Got an equation here. I have an equation here. I don't want to type the equations again and again and again. It would be nice to be able to sort of copy them down. So I'm going to highlight both of them. You can do it one at a time if you want. You can highlight just the single and pull that corner down, and it'll copy that equation all the way down. Or I want to do that on this column also. So I'm just going to highlight them both and pull them both down, and it copies them over. So some things you notice: when the price goes up, I'm getting the law of demand seems to be true, because as the price is rising, the quantity demanded is falling. And the law of supply seems to be true. As the price rises, the quantity supplied rises also. I've got some negative quantities here, which aren't going to make any sense, but we'll just leave them in there for now. So that's only taking me about 20 minutes to get to what Jordan was asking. Yeah, so how do we graph these things actually? You got to lay some groundwork though. Okay, so the way I think I've had the most luck in generating graphs in Excel. So I'm going to highlight all the data that I want to be graphed. And you sort of have to know this trick. You go to insert. I want to insert a chart. So here's my little insert tab. Again, I'm using, what version is this? I'm using a fairly new version of Excel. And for Windows also. I know people who use the Excel version for Mac have had a lot of issues with it. So I'm just showing you what I have access to and what I use, and I've gotten used to it. So my insert tab, I got the little charts area here. And you might think, oh, look at these lines right here. And even if I hover over it, it says insert a line chart. And you go, well, a demand curve is a line. I can see in my picture that it looks like a line. Can you see that? So there's some lines. Oh, it looks like line chart. That's going to be exactly what I want. Okay, I do this little thing here, and my little preview shows me 3 lines. I've got this, well, it looks like a quantity demand line. That looks okay, a quantity supply line. But I've got this weird P line, which makes no sense, because the price is supposed to be one of my axes. So I've never really had a heck of a lot of luck inserting a line chart. I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to go back and insert a little scatter plot, or scatter chart, or bubble chart. And it looks like it's going to give you are these dots if you just hover over it. But if I pull the little arrow down, I can get some lines too, like I want. And I'll leave the little dots on there too. So I'm going to pick a scatter plot with straight lines and markers. You can, if you want to go in and change these things, you can. So what it's given me is, if I just look at this without thinking about it too much, I've got my demand line is blue and it's sloping down, just like demand curves are supposed to. My supply line is sloping up, like it's supposed to. So things look pretty good. The only issue is that, well, I'm looking for a price of $3.75, and the price is supposed to be on my vertical axis here, which, well, I could figure out where $3.75 would be. It would be right about here. But, well, that certainly doesn't seem to be where this picture is making its equilibrium occur. And my quantity is supposed to occur at 20, and I don't even see 20 on the horizontal axis here. And the reason it's doing that, the reason I'm getting confused is because I've got my axes flipped around. Excel put the axes in the wrong spot. So it's measuring price, and you can see the dollar signs here. It's measuring price on the horizontal axis, and it's measuring the quantity on the vertical, which is what I don't want. So I'm pretty close to what I need, but not exactly. So I need to edit this or change it around a little bit. There's a few ways you can do it. You can, if you kind of click on the picture itself, you'll see these chart tools over here. And in my design tab, I see this button, switch row and column. And again, you go, well, that's exactly what I want because I've got the price on the horizontal, and I want to switch that to be the vertical axis. And it even shows a little blue arrow here doing exactly what I want. And so I go, oh, that's exactly what I need. This is going to save me so much time. Oh, that doesn't look anything like what I want. So again, another one of those buttons or features that you think is going to give you exactly what you need, but it doesn't. So what you need to do is you need to select your data, which you can either do by that button there, or if you do it, if you click on an individual line, or sorry, right click on an individual line, there's also this format data series or select data. You could do either of those, I think. So if I hit that select data button, I can sort of see the background of what's going into this chart. So I have a quantity demand line. It's blue, and I see it here. And this chart data range kind of tells me a little bit about what's going on. I mean, it's going from A1 down to C13. I want to edit it, though, and get a closer handle on what it's doing. So when I edit the series, so it's got the name, the series name, or what it's going to call it in the little legend down here. So if I change this, I guess I can't change it now. If I went here and changed it to be like that or something, then it sort of automatically changes it down in the chart because it knows that's the name of the chart that it's looking at. But what I really want to play with is, okay, what are the X values? And so again, the X values are going to be what's on your horizontal axis. The Y values are what's going to be on the vertical axis. So if I click into that box, I can see for the X values, well, I can see that it's doing it wrong because it's having price be selected as the X value when I want the price to be on the Y value or the horizontal axis. So if you're careful, you have to be really careful if you're just going to type it in. Like if you say, well, I want the quantity demand to be the X value. So you could go in and retype and say instead of A2 to A13, I want it to be B2 down to B13. So you could be kind of careful and do that, and it'll usually like it. Or I'm going to switch this one too. I'm going to switch my Y value and show you the other way of doing that. So I want my Y value to be the prices, and right now the default is to have this column B be the Y value or the vertical axis. So I can either retype these B's and make them A's, or I have this little button here over on the side. If I click that, delete that section. If I highlight the data that I want to be the vertical axis, then I can do it that way too. So you can either retype it, or you can sort of click on the little button and highlight what you want, and it'll do it that way. So now, and you can sort of see, it gives you a little I'm pointing at my screen. Can you guys see me point? Can you see where I'm pointing? No one says that they can. I can see a little preview here. You got my series name is QD. My X values now, it's showing me 46, 42. So that's what's going to be on my horizontal axis. Those are the values that are going to show up on the horizontal axis. And my Y values are my prices. So I'm going to hit OK. And it doesn't really look very nice. The chart doesn't look very good right now because, well, the demand line's slipping down. It still looks a little weird because I haven't changed the quantity supplied information yet. So I go to that little edit series window. There's my name, QS. I'm going to switch my X values from the P column to the, from the A column to the C column now. And I'll switch my Y values back to the price in column A. And now it's looking a little bit nicer. And I'll hit OK. And I feel better now because now it looks like I've got price here and quantities here. Okay. Again, you could probably go, well, it's a little weird. You're never going to have a negative quantity of things. So if you wanted to just go in here and delete those, because you know you're never going to have a negative quantity of things. So now I've got price on my vertical. I've got quantity on my horizontal. I got rid of the negative issue. I think my equilibrium quantity should be 20. And yes, here, luckily, my little chart is showing me this light gray line right at 20, and it's giving me the little axis value at 20. So that makes me feel good. I kind of can't see where this is. It looks to be about 375 if I had to eyeball it. So that's good. So why did I not do it so I could get 375 exactly? Well, sometimes you might not know what the actual solution is going to be. If you're doing a supply-demand equilibrium problem, it's fairly easy because you just do the algebra and you can usually solve those things pretty quickly. But sometimes we're going to do some graphs later in the course where there's some curvature involved, and being able to solve those things algebraically or with calculus gets a little hairy. Like you have to use the quadratic formula, which I don't know if you guys remember. What am I talking about? Of course you guys do. Incidentally, I'm from Michigan, so when I say you guys, that includes the females that are in the room too. So you guys is y'all, if you want to know. But everyone remembers the quadratic formula, right? You have the negative b plus or minus the square root of this nasty thing. So sometimes we don't always want to do that. And we want to just sort of rely on the picture itself to give us a sense of where the solution is. So here I could sort of eyeball it and go, well, okay, it looks like about 20 and 375. You could just go back in and do these things in 25-cent increments if you wanted to. And where's that going to get to? Make that at 5. These are all going to change to what I want them to be because I've just set up this equation in each section, and just changing the dollar amounts out here doesn't really do much, except it makes this look a little weird. I don't need my negatives here anymore. I'll delete those, and it didn't go up as high as I needed it to. It only went up to 350. Let me hit the auto button. I guess it doesn't change it, does it? So if I want this axis, let's go up to 5. Oh, it's because I didn't go like this. I want all these values. And I want all of these. There we go. So now I could even then it doesn't, I mean, I can see in my chart here, or in my table, when I've got my 375, I can see that these two values are equal, and it's the only place where the quantity demand, quantity supplied are equal. Every other place, they're not. So I can at least see here they're equal. But look, even in my chart, it doesn't have 375. It doesn't tell me the 375 number. It doesn't give me a nice little gray line here. So I didn't actually write 375 in the first time because sometimes you might not get the answer directly in terms of your table or in terms of your chart. So as best you can, you want to be able to solve things algebraically or with calculus. But if you can't do that, you can somewhat let the graph kind of give you a sense of where you're going. So let me see if I've managed to tackle everything that at least Jordan was asking about and what may have been implied in question 3C. Does the graphical equilibrium correspond to your algebraic equilibrium? Well, in my little technical problem here, my algebraic equilibrium said the price was 375 and the quantity was 20. And my graphical equilibrium does show that these curves are crossing at a quantity of 20 and 375. So they do seem to correspond. And go, well, my math said that 375 and a quantity of 20 should be what I need. Well, let me do this other problem here. And if I do my other chart over here, well, it looks like these two are sort of supporting each other, or they're corresponding. The answer I get in my algebra is the same as the answer that I get in my graph. So that's kind of nice that they support each other.